Welcome, Gunrunner.
Some time back I did a video looking at 5 Atari consoles that were cancelled before they really got anywhere, never even reaching the final prototype stage, and I always thought it would be a good idea to do a similar video for Sega, and here we are. So those of you who follow my channel will be more than aware that I've done lots of videos on unreleased Sega consoles and add-ons in the past, such as the intriguing Dreamcast Pace, and indeed the zip drive add-on for the DC2, the Saturn II, and the mysterious Master Drive, so there will be a little bit of crossover here, but as you'll soon find out, this is actually essential to tell the story in this video properly, because unlike the previous Atari related video, this one very much follows a set timeline of events, with all 5 consoles originating from the same decade. Oh, and for those of you who missed the other videos I just mentioned and want to watch them, I have linked them down in the description. I'm sure all you Sega fans have already worked out at least a few of the consoles I'm going to be talking about based on that information, but don't worry, I'm pretty sure there will still be some new and interesting information for you here, because I had to do an awful lot of digging and research to make this one. But I don't want to spoil the video too much before it's even started, so let's just leave it there and get on with the show as I proudly present the story of 5 cancelled Sega consoles.
Machine has appeared in homes across America.
Double and redouble his powers. 32X.
6 times more powerful than 3DO.
Alright, baby.
40 times more than Super NES.
Hey, yo! There is no 32-bit Super NES. Are we gonna see the games or what? Show me!
Increase the power of the unit 40 times.
Thank you.
Now I must start this first entry by pointing out I've already done a separate video on the Neptune, which I'll link in the description for those interested, but there was no way I could leave this one out, not just because it's an almost essential part of the overall story of this video with the following entries leading on directly from it, but also because the Sega Neptune has been in the news just this last week, after somebody built their very own Neptune console using a modified Mega Drive 2 case. Perhaps the most famous Sega console prototype of them all, the Neptune, as you probably know, was an all-in-one system from 1994 that combined the then aging 16-bit Mega Drive hardware with the newly released 32-bit Sega 32X add-on. Many people at the time moaned intensely about having to buy separate units to get the full 32-bit experience, and the rather complicated way you had to connect the mushroom-shaped add-on up to your console too. So the all-in-one Neptune console was very much the perfect response from Sega, who also hoped that people would see it as a lower cost alternative to the Saturn, for those folk who didn't want to replace their vast Sega Mega Drive collections yet. This new 32-bit hybrid system was shown to the press on numerous occasions, and a small run of prototype systems were also produced to impress retailers and developers alike. Unfortunately, the 32X was a dismal failure, probably the worst move that Sega have ever made, and certainly the start of their rapid decline that culminated in them exiting the hardware business completely after the failure of the Dreamcast. The lackluster sales of the 32X saw the Neptune being delayed 3 times, while Sega weighed up their options before quietly cancelling it altogether, along with the 32X, to focus on the also flagging Saturn. It wasn't just the poor sales of the 32X add-on that killed the Neptune though, it was also the cost of building them, which reportedly would have seen it retailing for about $50 less than the Saturn, not a big enough amount to qualify it as a budget option as Sega originally intended. In the last entry I mentioned how the Neptune story was an important way to start this video, and this next entry will very much explain why, because now we turn our attentions to the Sega Mars. Now, I know what all you hardcore Sega fans are saying, the Mars was just a code name for the 32X, right? And yes, you're correct, it most certainly was, but the name was then reused for this very closely related console, which was nothing more than a Neptune that also included a Mega CD, so it was a 3-in-1 system that could use both cartridges and CDs. We don't know a whole lot more about this console other than that, as no prototypes have ever been found, although several ex-Sega employees have confirmed it did exist, and why wouldn't it have? The whole concept makes perfect sense after all, especially when you see that Sega had already released a small amount of 32X CD games that required the original console and both add-ons to play. The idea was that the Mars, or Neptune CDX as it was also known, would have hit the market around 6 months after the Neptune to keep up the 32-bit buzz. The only thing we do know about the Sega Mars is that apparently it used a very similar case design as the Sega Pluto, which we'll be looking at in due course, so let's just leave this one here and move on to the next entry, shall we? Of all the consoles I'm covering in this particular video, the Jupiter is by far the strangest and most mysterious of the lot, so you'd certainly be excused for not having heard of it before. In essence, the Jupiter is an early version of what became the Saturn, but it also crosses over into the development of the 32X2, which gives you a pretty good indication of why it was cancelled. It's been said that the development of the Jupiter initially started in 1992, not long after the release of the Mega CD add-on, after Sega realised the limits of their current hardware, particularly when they saw the arrival of new CD-based multimedia machines like the Philips CDI, which hit the market that very same year. They knew the answer lied in 32-bit technology, but they still thought that people wanted consoles that played cartridges and not CDs, so the Jupiter was designed as a cartridge console first and foremost, just like its predecessor. But fairly early into the development stage, it soon became clear that CDs would be the way to go, especially when they heard that their biggest rival Nintendo was now exploring the format too. So the Jupiter was scrapped in the design phase before it even got near the prototype phase, and Sega started again with what would become the Saturn. However, they did carry over many design ideas from the Jupiter to the Saturn, which is the main reason why the Saturn is such a beast when it comes to 2D graphics, and still features a cartridge slot on the back. Although Sega had a change of heart on just what that cart slot would be used for. One very interesting tidbit of trivia regarding the Jupiter though, is that the Sega Titan arcade hardware, also known as the STV board, is said to be near identical to its initial design, as this coin-op system utilises ROM cartridges and not CDs, like the later Saturn console. Sega! As early as 1997, just 2 years after the Saturn's launch, various rumours began to circulate that Sega were already working on a successor to the 32-bit console. Amongst the many things reported was that this would be a 64-bit super console with state-of-the-art silicon graphics, quality 3D visuals and online gaming capabilities. Now these particular rumours are very much seen to be pointing towards the Dreamcast, but there were other reports that talked about a 64-bit upgrade of the Saturn that was spec'd for online gaming whilst remaining backwards compatible. So it's safe to say that consumers were left feeling very confused. The truth is that Sega were working on both. This has only come to light in recent years, when 2 different prototypes of the Saturn II surfaced and can be analysed further. Codenamed the Sega Pluto, keeping in with the planet-based naming themes, the Saturn II was designed to achieve several different things. Firstly, it featured a much sleeker and less bulky design, and has been found in 2 different colours, Saturn Black and a Dreamcast-like white. Secondly, it would offer online gaming as standard, a lot like the Dreamcast would after, with its built-in Netlink modem, which was already available as an add-on extra for the Saturn and allowed you to connect to the Sega Net online service, albeit in Japan only. But the Sega Pluto would have changed this, bringing Sega Net to the West too, and this is proved by the North American system BIOS found on both prototype consoles, which shows connection to Sega Net as an option. I'm pretty sure they would have then just adapted this slightly for the UK and other key European markets. Unfortunately, the relative failure of the Saturn in the marketplace saw Sega cancel the Saturn II so they could plough ahead with developing its follow-up, the Dreamcast. Sega! And speaking of the Dreamcast, we have another almost seamless link, as this last entry on the list is directly related to Sega's last console. In fact, we only call the Dreamcast Sega's lost console because of the cancellation of this incredibly intriguing machine. A lot of people greatly lament the death of the Dreamcast and talk about how different it could have been if the right decision had been made. You might have also heard about how the Dreamcast nearly lived on through the original Xbox, as there was a big rumour at the time of the Microsoft console's development that it was going to be Dreamcast compatible. Some people even dubbed the Xbox the Dreamcast 2 because of this rumour, as well as Sega's early support for the Microsoft console too. In fact, it was also strongly rumoured that the Xbox would even be marketed as a Sega console in the company's Japanese homeland, where American consoles had traditionally struggled. It was hoped that the Sega branding would help change this. So what is the actual truth to that Dreamcast 2 rumour then? Well, back in 2016, I was lucky enough to interview the man dubbed the father of the Xbox, the one and only Ed Freeze, and asked him about the truth behind the rumour, and his answers were very revealing. There were two teams with internally competing divisions for a Microsoft console. One was from the Windows CE team that had put a version of Windows in the Dreamcast and pushed to make our console compatible with Sega's. The other was our Xbox team, which had a completely different vision. Ultimately, we, the Xbox team, won out, and their project was cancelled, and many of them joined our team and helped us make Xbox better. So there we have it. The Xbox as we know it wasn't designed to be compatible with the Dreamcast at all, but the other alternative console design that Microsoft considered at the same time was. This explains why Sega were on board with the Xbox project from day one, and why many unreleased Dreamcast games like ToeJam & 3, Panzer Dragoon Auto and Jet Set Radio Future were ported to the Xbox instead. I guess it's nice that a little bit of Sega's console DNA was retained somewhere, and in many ways still carries through to today, with the Xbox consoles being at least partially backwards compatible with each other. Long live Sega!
And from the far corners of the earth, so shall the multitude be joined together, and their power will be magnificent to behold.
And that rounds up my look at 5 cancelled Sega consoles. Were you looking forward to one of these consoles coming out, or do you think Sega did the right thing by pulling the plug? I also love to hear the thoughts and views of my audience, so please get typing in that comment section. Before I go though, I must thank all of my loyal patrons for continuing to support my channel and make videos like this possible. However, I must give special thanks to the following patrons and YouTube backers in particular for their much appreciated pledges: Paul Daniel, Mins, Dos Gamerman, Luke MC, Carl Olsen, Seth Robinson, Grady Haynes, Mark Strickland, Kalimatorn, Trogdor the Burninator, Daniel Skronsky, Ben P. Stein, Tabby Kitsune, Alan J. Dodds, and Electron Star Collapse. If you also want to help support all my creative endeavours, including this YouTube channel, then please go and check out my Patreon right now, where you can get access to extra content including downloads, exclusive videos, creative insights, and much more besides. I've been the Laird, I thank you for watching, I'll see you all again for another video very soon.